Tonight, a full confession from the man accused of killing a longtime pastor just north of the valley. Adam Sheafe, in his own words, telling 12 News he planned on executing and crucifying more than a dozen priests across the country before he was caught. His first victim, Pastor Bill Schonemann of New River.
And tonight, 12 News journalist Chase Golightly spoke with Sheafe while in custody about the murder. We do want to warn our viewers that what you're about to hear is disturbing.
I say let's just get right into it, Adam. What do you have to say about the accusations against you in this case?
I think in what regards?
Just you're accused of killing a pastor out of New River. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office says that you were planning on carrying out several other murders here in Arizona and maybe in other states. What do you have to say about those allegations?
All of those allegations are correct.
And can you just tell me why choose New River? Why go after Pastor Bill?
Well, my plan was to start in Phoenix and then circle 10 states around the nation with the 13 tribes of Israel, and then to finish in Phoenix, where I was baptized when I was 3 years old, and that would be for Adam. So the reason being is the first commandment. I feel that Christianity, I was raised Christian, breaks the first commandment. Our Father, God, the Father, Yahweh alone is God. And anyone preaching that the Son is God or a human being is God breaks the first commandment and has led the flock astray. Anyone preaching that to me has led the flock astray, and so therefore that's why I was going after them.
And just tell me, they said that you came in from out of state. Where did you come from going into Arizona?
California. So I came from Oceanside, California. I was living on the beach, in a beautiful beach home, and I just felt like nobody could hear a word I was saying. That the first commandment, Yahweh alone is God. His commandments have been annulled by this character called Jesus, who I believe is the son of Satan, which is why he's worshipped as God, the Antichrist. And I was born in Phoenix, so I went to Phoenix first, because where it starts is where it ends, like in the Garden of Eden. God himself said that Israel is his firstborn son, the 13 tribes of Israel. Adam is the one and only created son, if there's a one and only, in his father's image, which is God. And my plan was to start in Phoenix and to end in Phoenix. So 13 tribes of Israel, starting with Benjamin, the youngest of the sons, in ascending order all the way to Reuben. And then the 14th was for Adam, who God himself spoke out of his own mouth and declared were his sons. Not this Jesus. I don't know where Jesus came from. He's nowhere in the original Hebrew Bible, which is called the Old Testament. The New Testament says, oh, well, that's the old and this is the new. Says who? That's not what God said. God said his laws are eternal and they're forever, and never to be annulled by anyone.
If we can talk about Pastor Schonemann for a second. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office said that you actually went to his church in New River. Is that true? Where did you first see Pastor Bill Schonemann?
Well, the first church I went to was on Olive Street, the Church of Christ, on Easter Sunday. And when I followed him home, 2 women came out of the garage to meet him. And so that was not part of my plan. I only want to execute and crucify the priests that are leading the flock astray. So I then told myself, well, I need to find a priest that lives alone. So I was driving around looking for different churches. I came across New River. It was on a Wednesday afternoon. I went into it was empty, it was vacant, so I went into the little mobile office. I saw that he had a Wednesday evening Bible study. So I sat there and waited for them to arrive so that I could locate which one was the priest. And then I just followed him home. And then I returned on Sunday to execute and crucify him to his wall.
I was going to say, what time did that happen? Did you ever speak with Pastor Bill?
No, I never spoke to him.
And then what time was it that you said that you went in to execute and crucify him on Sunday? What time did that happen?
It was actually early Monday morning. It'd be like 2 to 3 a.m.
How did you get in the home?
I just walked in it.
It was unlocked?
Yes, it was unlocked.
And then did he say anything to you? Did you say anything to him during this?
Yeah, I said, are you praying to Jesus right now? And he said, yes. And I said, good, because he can't hear you. God the Father alone is God. It's the first commandment, and the son that wears the crown is Adam. Jesus is the son of Satan. And he said, oh, come on. And then I said, hold still. And I executed him. And then I got in a high-speed chase with the police and escaped. Got into a car crash, got out, ran up a mountain and escaped. And I was just determined to get those two priests, so instead of leaving, I hiked all through the night because I couldn't walk on the main road or be spotted by an officer. I hiked all the way back to the tent to that church. The next day, I thought, well, you know what? When the priest gets into the car, I'll just jump into the back seat and tell him to drive to his house. But when I went to get into the back seat, there was an old lady like on a little bicycle, like one little floor-like bicycle. She like got in front of me, and so I thought, you know what? I need to get a vehicle and follow them home, and be a lot easier that way. So that's how I ultimately got apprehended. Is I went into a house. That video of me like walking around that house was actually like looking for a vehicle, which is why I went into the garage. And I triggered the alarm, and then I was in my tent, and there was a drone above me, and then another chase with the police went on for like maybe, I don't know, a half hour through that mountainous little area.
I did want to ask, how long were you planning this?
You know what? I had not planned it for very long. I was in the desert. I went to Phoenix, and I maybe for like a couple months, I was thinking about it because everywhere I went, like I live on the beach, there's people preaching Jesus is God. I go into the grocery store, every magazine had the face of Jesus on it. I mean, it is, you're just bombarded by it. And at the same time, sin is at the maximum. You know, the drugs are flooding into this nation. You can buy drugs cheaper than you can buy McDonald's and easier. You know, pornography, the sanctity of marriage is completely eroded. It's worse than the days of Noah. And it all goes hand in hand with breaking the first commandment. All Satan has to do is switch who God is, and all of God's commandments go out the window. Oh, there's a new covenant, they say. God's laws have been annulled. Just worship this man and you go to heaven. That's what Satan would say. That's why this world is a wreck. So I call it Operation First Commandment. You know, I'm going to strike Satan attacks the first commandment the hardest because all he has to do is switch who God is, and society goes over the cliff. Well, I'm going to fight back the first commandment full speed, and I'm going to these preachers that are preaching these lies that a human being is God, when God Himself said 5,000 times that He alone is God. He says His name 6,828 times in the original Hebrew text, and they removed it and replaced it with Lord. You know, that's the name, that's the tattoo that I have across my neck. And it's YHVH, and the proper pronunciation of that is Yahweh. So, you know, that's why. I mean, it's Operation First Commandment. That's the whole. So I really developed that camping in the desert, you know, and really strategized what my plan was going to be. Had I been better prepared, I obviously probably would have, you know, executed all 14 priests, because had I got all their addresses first before I executed one and just hit one right after the other, I don't think there would have been any way to stop me. But with all that being said, everything happens the way it's supposed to.
I'm going to ask you that one more time. How many people were you planning to execute?
13 for the tribes of Israel, who God Himself said, Israel's my firstborn son. Exodus chapter 4, verse 22. He said to Moses, go tell Pharaoh, Israel's my firstborn son. Release my firstborn son, or I will kill all of your firstborn sons. That's God. God doesn't preach, He commands. And then the 14th was for Adam, where I was baptized. So, because nobody can deny, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, God created Adam in His image. In His likeness, He created him, male and female, He created them, which is Eve, Hava. So, you know, that's why there was 14, and I was going to circle the country, all right, so that the whole entire nation could say, you know what? He's right. God did say that He alone is God. That is the first commandment, and His commandments, He said we are to follow forever. They're never to be changed by anybody. You know, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, cheek for cheek. That's the corrective measure to sin. You know, if you turn the other cheek, that's what cowards do. If everyone turned the other cheek, Satan would run rampant, and who could stop him? You know, God said eye for eye, tooth for tooth, cheek for cheek. Jesus came along and annulled all of God's laws. And our society is a wreck. God doesn't speak one single word in the New Testament. It was written in Greek. It was added to the original Hebrew Bible. They called that the New and that the Old. So that's, you know, and I know you can't hear me. I know you can't hear what I'm saying. But if you've done your research like I've done, and you've studied like I've studied, and you've put the time and effort into it, it's all right there. But we just go to church and believe whatever we're taught, and we just do what everybody else does, and we say, oh, well, surely they can't all be wrong. Well, yeah, surely they can. Look around you. Society's a wreck.
Well, Adam, you gave your reasoning saying these attacks, these murders were done with religious motivation, but like you said, I might not be able to hear you. Other people watching this might not be able to hear you. So I do want to ask you, have you ever considered that you're just mentally unwell?
No. I mean, maybe I'm the one that sees truth, and maybe it's everybody else that is deceived by Satan.
I did want to say, what also made you be willing to talk with news stations to share your side of the story? What motivated you want to do this interview?
Because I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get the first commandment back in place. You know, Yahweh alone is God. And nobody even knows his name, which he says, in the last days, no one will know my name. And so the first commandment has to be corrected first, and then the rest of his laws come into place, the rest of his eternal laws. Second commandment, third commandment, fourth commandment, fifth commandment, sixth commandment, and down the line. There's 613 laws he gave to the Israelites. But it starts with the first commandment, acknowledging who he is. So if that makes me mentally ill for following what God says, then so be it.
As you said, you admitted to the allegations against you. What do you think should happen to you? Right now you're in Coconino County Jail. What do you think should happen to you at the end of this?
Well, what I'd like to happen is I'd like them to put me on death row, and I'd like them to set the execution date quickly to show them that the story of God sacrificing his son is utter BS. God is a lion's lion, a gladiator's gladiator, protective like you can't imagine. Cain killed Abel, and if anyone touched Cain, you were avenged sevenfold, and that was God's grandson. You try and kill Adam and watch what happens to you. So the whole story of God killing his son is BS. And then the son being God and replacing God is how Satan operates. So I invite the government to, let's do a demonstration. Put me on death row, set the execution date for right now. The victims want it, the victims' families want it, I want it, and the taxpayers want it. So what's the holdup? The government? The government is the one that's holding this up? Why? So let's set the execution date, and let me demonstrate what happens when you try and kill God's son. It's not going to happen. God is protective like you can't imagine, and I'm protective of him in return.
The other thing I want to ask you is you're talking about the first commandment. Just looking at the commandments right here, I mean, one of them is thou shalt not murder. Doesn't that kind of counteract what you're saying with these commandments, is that it says thou shalt not kill?
Okay, so let me ask you this. The President of the United States, he sends the military to go attack, and they kill their target. Is that murder? You don't consider that murder, right? Because the President commanded it. God commanded that if anyone preaches anyone other than him as God, we are to execute them. So, yeah, thou shalt not kill is a commandment. It's the sixth commandment, by the way. But how much higher is God, the one who created the universe? How much higher are his commandments than the president's? So we'll justify killing for the president and the military, but yet we won't follow what God said? And that's the problem, is because we think no one fears God. We've been taught that, oh, you can take him and nail him to a piece of wood. No, you can't. You can't even look at God. You're to respect him. He alone is God. He alone gets to make the laws, and we are to obey those laws. And one of those commandments, read Deuteronomy chapter 13. You know, explicitly, we are told that if anybody preaches that anyone other than the Father is God, we are to execute them.
And you talked about how you want to be on death row. The victim's family wants to be on death row. I'm sure there's been a lot of parishioners, a lot of people here that have been wanting to know why you did this. You answered those questions. Is there anything you want to say to that victim's family about why you did this?
Well, yeah. I mean, I consider God to be my father, and people go to church to learn about God, and he's teaching them that a human being is God. No, he's not. So his father erased my father. So I erased his father. It's tit for tat. What about our Creator? What about my father? He's my daddy. When does he matter? When do the words that departed from his mouth matter? When do we start obeying him and stop following these false teachings? So if I'm the one that's got to step out there and make the first move, then so be it. And like I said, I have zero fear. I'm not afraid of the government. Nothing happens without God's permission. An ant doesn't crawl across the ground without his say-so. So when I say put me on death row, I'm not saying I want to die. I'm saying you can't kill me. And I'll demonstrate that. Because God is protective. That's where we get it from. We're protective of our children. He's protective of his children. Adam is his first and only created son in his image. Israel is his firstborn son. Adam wasn't born, he was created. Adam's first, Adam returns last. So let's get this party started.